Welcome back, AP, and welcome back to your first flip of the fourth quarter. That is absolutely terrifying. We only have 2 tests left to go. You'll take a test on World War I and its lead-up. You'll take a test on World War II and its shenanigans. And then we won't take a test on the last unit because we're just going to teach it to you because it's going to be on the AP test anyway, so who really cares? All right, so now, anyway, but big thing is this flip is going to be so short. All right, now, anyway, so big thing, though, going into this is we have to understand is what we're getting into right now, okay? So what we're doing is we're talking about the major foundational setting up, kind of stuff going on leading up to this war. Now, the common theme to understand where we left off in the last unit is that a lot of these countries, even though they have now unified, i.e. German Empire, i.e. Kingdom of Italy, and even though they've been around for a long time, i.e. France, i.e. England, i.e. etc. Now, the big thing, though, is that they're not going to be as strong on the outside as they appear. Or, excuse me, sorry, back up. So, wait, I got to back up.
Bag up, Terry. Put it in reverse, Terry. Put it in reverse. Oh, Lord, Jesus. Oh, Lord. Oh, Jesus. What you doing, Terry? Terry,
So, to put it in reverse, all right, after this process, post-1871, you could look at the continent of Europe and be like, wow, those countries are super strong, man. They all got their stuff together. They know what's up. Well, the reason why World War I did not occur earlier, a lot of it has to do with the fact that these countries were internally struggling with themselves, right? You cannot go off and fight wars if you are yourself internally fighting small political ideology battles within your own country, right? So we're talking today about some of those political
the ideological cornerstone.
Ideological level.
Look at their ideological ties.
Battles that are going to be going on during this time period, okay? So we're encroaching upon a great war, and a lot of it has to do with the fact that the state of the nations from 1817 to 1914 are not as strong as they appear. And the first one that we're going to start off with is, of course, as always, the motherland, Deutschland, all right? Now, anyway, so Germany, a.k.a. the German Empire, not actually known as Germany right now. So they do have a strong central government with the Kaiser and the Chancellor, right? The Kaiser being Wilhelm I, and the Chancellor being Otto von Bismarck, and then a parliament now, known as the Reichstag, right? Now, the Reichstag does not have as much power as like a British parliament or a National Constituent Assembly or a whatever. But it's still a pretty decently strong legislative branch, right? It's considered a lower house. It still elects men through universal male suffrage established by Bismarck of everyone over the age of 25, which is very, very important. But it's also really important to know that Bismarck has some problems going into creating this government that he wants to be viewed as stable and be viewed as strong and powerful, right? For Germany, this new fledgling country, even though it's called the German Empire, to grow and create itself to the potential of which it needs to be, he's got to figure out how to quell some of the infighting going on inside of his country, right? And that's not going to be solved with simple things. Jot this down really quick. Germany's economy post-1871 is going to explode, right? Like they are going to have a massive industrial output. A lot of it has to do with things like the Bessemer process, which goes into the production of making steel. A lot of it has to do with chemical engineering under companies like Bayer, who invent aspirin for the very first time, right? And a lot of it also just has to do with heavy industrial movement, right? So the biggest thing about it, though, is Germany has a very strong economy, but they're not very strong politically right now, right? And you have to understand, Bismarck has to figure out a way to integrate the 2 different political views of Germany together as one, right? So there are 2 different methods of integration, right? You have positive integration and negative integration, right? Positive integration is when you unite the people of your country using positive actions or happy things, right? Like, we all love ice cream, so let's have it on Wednesdays. We all love tacos, so let's have them on Tuesdays, right? That's positive integration. We're all getting excited about these things, and we're all progressing forward, right? Together as one. Negative integration, on the other hand, is you're bringing people together in spite of others, right? So it would be like, hey, Chappelle, let's unite to destroy Mount Carmel, right? Like, so that's negative integration because you're basing it off negative feelings or negative actions, right? So which of these two, which is why we have the question mark right here, do you think Bismarck is going to go with first? He actually does both of them, right? He does both of these actions. He attempts positive and negative integration, but which one of them do you think that he tries to use first, as of 1871 anyway? He goes negative first, all right? And the two big things that he does out the gate to negatively integrate the German people into a united place, to not be Bavarians anymore, or to not be, from Holstein or from Schleswig or whatever. He wants them to all be like, oh, we're Germans now. We are of the German Empire. He decides to attack the Catholic Church, right? So the big one first is called Kulturkampf, right? Kulturkampf is a program initiated by Bismarck to unilaterally attack the Catholic Church, right? Because he believed that papal infallibility and the Pope in Rome presented a power struggle that could possibly interfere with the rulership of the Chancellor and the Kaiser. He also was really frustrated because the Catholic Church controlled most of the education practices of any upper-class people inside of the German Empire, much like it did in every other country in Europe at the time. So Bismarck is going to begin to create this attack on them, right? He's going to start making educated workforces and actually like public lower schools to try and force out or subvert any Catholic ideas. He starts making laws to prevent them from opening new schools. He starts making laws to prevent the Pope from appointing bishops inside of the German Empire, right? So he attacks them hoping that the 65% Protestant majority of the German Empire would unite together against a Catholic minority, pushing them out and creating a stronger Germany. It didn't work that way, though, right? It actually blew up in his face because a lot of the Protestants were like, bro, enlightenment, man. Voltaire said, we got to chill with all this religious intolerance, right? So it actually kind of blew up in Bismarck's face, right? It actually really blew up in his face. And we'll talk about his reaction with positive integration here in a minute. And he's also going to create anti-socialist laws, right? So there are two groups, if you look at this, that he's really nervous about. Bismarck, if you've noticed throughout the entire unification process, actually has usually been pretty pro-middle class, right? Pretty into the middle class, pretty behind the middle class, thinks they're pretty dope and stuff like that, and knows that he can use them to get a lot of things accomplished. Now, a lot of this has to do with the demographic proportionality and economic interests of like the German Empire citizens, but you have to understand that he sees two threats: the Catholic minority and the socialists, right? Now, he creates these things called the anti-socialist laws to prevent this thing called the Social Democratic Party from gaining any steam within the Reichstag, right? He does not want them to get elected to a majority. He does not want them to keep getting elected. He does not want them to keep rabble-rousing the workers and getting them all hyped up, right? So he creates these laws saying, you can no longer wear insignias of the Social Democratic Party. You can no longer organize together as the Social Democratic Party. You cannot do this because it stands in the way of German industry and it will stand in the way of the growth of our power, right? Well, this also blew up in his face because the workers got mad about this. They were like, you can't tell the party that represents me to stop doing what they're doing. And also the Social Democratic Party members would be like, all right, fine, we won't wear a little badge or a little insignia. We'll just put red threads on all of our buttons, which I want to do so bad. So red threads on all of our suit jacket buttons. And then when he started outlawing that, they all started putting red flowers in their lapels, being like, oh yeah, we're not socialists. Check out my red flower. So the big thing about it is his anti-socialist laws blew up in his face as well. Ironically enough, making their party at times much stronger and then leading to more of them being elected in the Reichstag, right? The reaction by the public to both of these things was negative, right? So it was a negative thing that kind of blew up in his face, right? Now, the next thing we got to talk about, though, is how he's going to go back on that. Bismarck, being the genius diplomat that he is going to decide to go back on the things that he had done because he's a good politician. He's the man, actually. So he's a good politician, and even though he did something wrong ahead of time, he was like, okay, fine, I'm wrong, my bad. And he decides to try and fix it. So as of 1878, after the death of the Pope and the election of a new, more chill Pope, he actually does peace mitigation talks with the church. He tells them they are allowed to appoint bishops in certain areas that actually have like Catholic majorities, places like Bavaria and stuff like that. He also tells them that you will work alongside with the German government and not against its Protestant leadership. And so I think it's Pope Pius VIII that is going to be like elected after this. No. Pope Pius is the one that died. I think it's like Pope Leopold or something like that. I got to look it up. But this peace mitigation talks with the church is actually going to re-solidify the people of Germany. Like, all right, Bismarck, good job. And then also you're going to see insurance. This is genius. Okay, so he slowed down the steam of the of the Social Democratic Party by actually providing things to make the workers happy. Right? He was like, don't support them. Support the chancellor and your Kaiser. He offered them accident insurance, old age insurance, disability insurance, health insurance for workers or the majority of workers within the German Empire, right? He was like, if you get into an accident, I need you to come back healthy and happy so you can keep making that steel in the factory. When you get old, since you've worked so hard for Germany, you deserve to be paid, right? That's like the preemptive, like he basically created the earliest forms of Social Security, right? Disability insurance, health insurance, should you actually be like sick or ill or have a family member that's sick or ill, so you can then go and do what? Get back to work, right? Like, so like Bismarck is so flippin' smart, all right? So like the big thing you gotta understand is that Bismarck did this to slow down the growing power of the Socialist Democratic Party, but also to keep the workers happy, right? He realized that negative integration was not the way to go, so he decided to go the positive route instead, right? He also, jot this other one down, he created free education systems inside the German Empire. These are all socialist things, right? But he saw it as state socialism. Ironically enough, the Social Democratic Party hated the things that he was doing because he was currying favor with the workers, but they didn't like it because the government was in charge of those benefits, right? So going forward, though, but everything's going to blow up in Bismarck's face when this smelly, stupid, dead arm, goofy mustache brat takes the throne in 1888, all right? So Kaiser Wilhelm unfortunately dies. Kaiser Wilhelm I unfortunately dies in 1888 of natural causes, right? Ironically enough, the anti-socialist laws were predicated by the fact that there were some assassination attempts on Kaiser Wilhelm I, and Bismarck claimed that the socialists were the ones trying to execute Kaiser Wilhelm I, right? It's where a lot of his impetus for the anti-socialist laws came from, because he said they're trying to depose or they're anarchists and stuff like that. And so, like, what's going to end up happening, though, is Kaiser Wilhelm dies of natural causes in 1888, and his son is going to take the throne, and he looks like this, and that's Kaiser Wilhelm II. Look at that stupid mustache, all right? And look at that stupid dead arm he has. That thing doesn't even work. It just hangs loosely at his side. And every time he would take a picture, he'd like prop it up on a sword or something like that. So it looked like it was doing things, right? It's dumb. That belongs at number 6. His dead arm belongs at number 6 because I find it hilarious, right? And so what Wilhelm II is going to do is he comes in and he immediately lifts all anti-socialist legislation. Now, some of y'all are like, well, Mr. Terry, that's chill, right? That's chill. He's coming in, and Wilhelm II showing up, and he's lifting this anti-socialist legislation to allow the Reichstag to freely, like, actually elect its own personnel and stuff like that. You're not wrong, but you're not right, okay? Because the only reason he's doing this is not to try and aid the people. He's doing it to shove it in Bismarck's face, right? So he's doing it as a power play, because this is very interesting. Kaiser Wilhelm II hates Otto von Bismarck. He thinks that he puppeteered his father throughout his entire career and that he pretended to be the Kaiser behind the scenes. And so much so he believed this that he actually forced Bismarck to resign in 1890. So we have a conservative tool bag coming to power inside the German Empire, right? Kaiser Wilhelm II. It's very, very important that we know his name. It's very important that we know that he forced Bismarck to resign, even after the positive integration methods that he took on, right? So now, going forward, though, now we got to move over to France, right? So we're going from like 1871 to like 1914-ish, talking about domestic policy in France, right? So the big thing is that we got to remember is never forget the Paris Commune, right? So as of 1871, this is still when Bismarck is in charge. In 1871, the Paris Commune is going to be destroyed and replaced by the French Third Republic, right? So the interesting thing about all this is that this technically is considered the very first successful communist revolution that has ever occurred within inside of Europe, right? Because the city of Paris and the Paris Commune took over the city, created these barricades, took the cannons, established their own little National Guard inside the city alone, and tried to create a communal, singular, communist-style government inside of this one city, right? Until the Prussians and the French military show up during this thing called the Bloody Week and shoot everybody, right? Now, the Paris Commune dies very quickly, only after a couple of months, and after eating a bunch of zoo animals, right? But 20,000 people are going to die in the destruction of the Commune, right? But it is important to know that France is weak from the onset, right? They are very weak from the onset going in and very fragile and in a very, very delicate state, right? 20,000 people are now dead. And then also jot this down. They are furious that they lost Alsace-Lorraine, all right? Alsace-Lorraine. Write it down. Alsace-Lorraine, okay? I will even, I will even type it for you right now. Look at this. Look at it. Alsace, wait, I don't want to use that tab. Sorry, Alsace-Lorraine. All right, so yeah, look at this. Look how beautiful Alsace-Lorraine is. First of all, we can go there. How about that? All right, so anyway, now, Alsace-Lorraine. Alsace-Lorraine is the territory that they lost to the German Empire following the Franco-Prussian War. It shares both French and German cultural things, and it's very important that you understand that they lost a huge trade chunk of their original country, and so they're very furious with the Prussians, right? But right now, you now have 20,000 people dead, and your entire government was the one that did this during this thing called the Bloody Week of 1871. And this guy that's going to be appointed president of France now is a dude named Adolphe Tiers, right? Adolphe Tiers, I'm not saying that right. I don't speak French, so he's probably like Adolphe Tiers. Becomes president, and he wants to completely avoid relenting to any other monarch, right? So they create a new constitution, and in this they write that basically a legislative body and a president will be the only thing that rules, right? And he said we must create the government that divides us the least, right? And he's actually a pretty important figure. Adolphe Tiers is a very, very positive figure, and he creates a progressive Republican government, right? Because he realized going into this, why was Napoleon III able to take power? Because he made the workers happy, right? Why did none of the republics actually exist? Because they operated completely on fear, right? So instead, Adolphe Tiers comes in and he legalizes trade unions. He creates free and compulsory education systems for both sexes. That's right. Adolphe Tiers actually creates schools for women in France and schools for boys, and they're compulsory, which means you gotta go. All right, so you have to go. Public education, right? He actually also levied taxes to create these public schools, and the only people that didn't like this were the French conservative Catholics, right? And the only reason that they don't like it is because they can see their power is beginning to be subverted. All right, so now anyway, so Adolphe Tiers comes in and takes a hold of this cracked, destroyed France that has just been rocked by the Franco-Prussian War. It's just lost Alsace-Lorraine and has seen the death of 20,000 people and a lot of their zoo animals and dogs, and comes in and creates a solid government. Now, some of you are like, well, man, nice. That's pretty dope, right? Like, at least they did that, Mr. Terry. They're creating a positive thing. Well, then they went up and then they decided to be super anti-Semitic. All right, so now look, the big thing that ends up happening, though, is France becomes ground zero for anti-Semitic activity exploding throughout Europe, right? And it all happens during this thing known as the Dreyfus Affair, right? And that is where we're going to stop, and we're going to talk about the Dreyfus Affair in class, okay? Now, I'm going to link below a little video that's very cute and really awesome, explains the Dreyfus Affair, if you want to watch it before we talk about it in class. If you don't have time, I completely understand, but I'll talk to you guys about that stuff soon. Y'all have a great one.